Preventing fraud and embezzlement in your dental practice, very sensitive topic when we're discussing it from time to time, but we take a different approach at it here at My Practice, My Business. In our clinical business of dentistry training and for the office manager and team training, the way we teach it is we like to protect both our office managers and our dentists. We take a really unique approach to it because we love everybody and we don't want anybody to get in trouble. We begin our podcast right there.
Computers are live, mixer is up, levels are good, equalizer is good, ready channels 1 and 2. Mic is live in 3, 2, 1, roll it. Welcome, listeners, to the My Practice, My Business podcast, where we teach dentists and their teams how to reclaim forgotten profitability in dentistry with our clinical business of dentistry training. And now, the host of our show, the clinical director at My Practice, My Business, Dr. Rob Thorup.
Well, as many of you know, I've not always been a dentist, and I've done many things in my life that have been fun and exciting. One of those things is I've been a private investigator here in Utah for many, many years. I'm affiliated with a company called Panther Securities and Investigations. If you take a look at their website, you'll see my mugshot. Well, at least you won't see my mugshot. We try to keep some things a little confidential in case I've got to go do an investigation. I don't want anybody knowing who I am. So we take and do investigations into a lot of different areas, and fraud and embezzlement is an area where I take and help out in when it comes to medical and dental practices. But we have a fantastic investigator. She is unbelievable and relentless, and she catches them. That's the bottom line. She knows how to get them. I don't like getting people. I don't like to just, I don't like to catch people in the act. It's just so frustrating, and it just breaks my heart every time we do. But in dentistry, approximately 70% of all dental practices will experience fraud and embezzlement at some time. And oftentimes, I don't know what the statistics are for multiple times, but boy, I'll tell you, it's just rampant. And it's not always the office manager. It can be anybody up front there, anybody with unscrupulous capabilities of acting and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But typically it's the office manager. So our thought leadership at My Practice, My Business is we like to prevent that. So we don't want our office managers to get in trouble. And so we take a little extra time in our training to talk about these things. And if anybody's having those thoughts or actually in the act of doing it, we try to prevent it. We try to stop it just by talking with them about different things. And one of our training, in our training, I should say, we teach the office manager and the doc what is to be expected. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. So this is a really sensitive topic for me because I know many of you out there are listening with your staffs, and I don't want anybody to be eyeballing their front office, their office managers, and going, I wonder if you're stealing from the company. That's not the intent of this podcast, and I hope it's I hope there's love and trust that goes both directions, and those office managers, they work their guts out. But you're also not entitled to more. So let's start right there and support them and help them. And docs, there are ways to help them stay on the straight and narrow so they're not tempted. Stop tempting your office managers because of your lack of business training. So we'll go into that. The definition of fraud is the wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. And embezzlement is theft or misappropriation of funds placed in one's trust or belonging to one's employer. So there has to be, for fraud, there has to be deception, embezzlement, there has to be the theft that takes place. That's the combination of fraud and embezzlement. So the types of fraud and embezzlement that we typically see in dentistry, and this is where it's not always the office manager. There's inappropriate coding and billing is number one, and that's where a patient will come in and they're improperly, it's just improper coding. This is where sometimes we see dentists out there that will say, "Oh, just code this," and the team looks at the doc and it's like, "Doc, we didn't really do it." "I know, just code it because the insurance will pay more." We've seen that happen. We got brought in on an investigation on that at one time, and it had to do with it was an orthodontic situation where a doc was inappropriately billing orthodontic care because the insurance would pay more on one code versus the other. So that's, again, fraud and embezzlement. There's theft via write-offs. And this is the one that we commonly see in offices where a patient will come in and they'll pay for something with cash, or an office manager will have two forms of payment, and then he or she will write off a portion and pocket that in their purse or wallet. The second one is theft via pocketing cash or checks from patients. Oh my gosh, we had one not too long ago where the office manager had literally set up an account, an account in the doctor's name, and she was on that account. And what's funny is this was at a different bank than what the practice was using, and she would deposit checks into that account, and she had full access to it, and so that account was paying rent and paying for vehicles and paying for all kinds of things. Boy, we see that type of stuff from people who are well-trained in fraud and embezzlement. And then there's a fourth one that any employee can do, and that's time clock theft. And we'll get into that more. So inappropriate coding is like upcoding, where a doc will place a base metal PFM crown into a patient's mouth, and they'll charge for a high noble crown because it pays more, or doing the orthodontic thing, which we were talking about. They're just coding for things that you didn't do, or coding for wrong procedures. Team members, that's where you can keep your doc on the straight and narrow and keep him or her honest and not allow them to do that. You see, everybody thinks fraud and embezzlement, we're going to talk about, the office managers, but these types of practices go both ways. And when an office manager sees a doc doing those kinds of things, then they oftentimes, during interviews that we have with them when they get busted, they're like, well, the doctor was doing this, doctor was doing that, so I felt I could do it too. And you know what? It's a justification for wrongful doing, and you don't want to be justified in doing anything wrong. Okay, so keep everybody on the straight and narrow. So docs, don't do that. Code for everything you do. We teach multi-codes, explosion codes, and when there's something that we haven't done, it gets deleted. You don't charge or bill it out, okay? All right, theft via write-offs by front office. This is a tough one that happens all the time. They write off procedures at will without the doctor's approval. And I'm not talking about write-offs that where cash or any type of financial gain happens. I'm talking about office managers. When you just write off things arbitrarily, that's wrong. A procedure was done, and you and the team worked their guts out, and then you feel like you want to be the altruistic, kind-hearted person that patient comes in and just loves you so much because you write things off. That's theft too. You can't just arbitrarily write off any procedures without the doctor's approval. And write-offs due to difficulty in collecting it from the patient or the insurance. This is another one that we see. It's like it's like you bypass the doc. You don't even want to talk to the doctor about it. It's just you're tired of dealing with things. You're tired of dealing with the patient trying to collect money for procedures that have actually been done. And so you just arbitrarily write it off because you don't want to do your job. You don't want to battle the insurance. You don't want to talk to that patient. And it goes both directions. We see office managers that will go to other staff members and say, I need you to collect this. I need you to push hard on these patients and call them and collect this money. And the poor little, 3-month-old assistant that you go pick on to do your job, it's like they're scared to death to call. They don't know how to do it. They're barely learning how to be an assistant. We see all this stuff all the time. You guys know what I'm talking about. It just happens. Stop it. Just do your job. Then the theft via pocketing cash or checks from patients. See, these are payments made or cash or checks that are pocketed and charges are altered. And that's where forensic accounting comes in. This is where our team member at Panther Securities and Investigations, she can pick that up so quickly on any kind of accounting reports. It scares me. Anyway, then banking accounts made at unknown banks under the practice's name, which we alluded to already, and then cash is the easiest prey. Anytime somebody will pay with cash, the payment will come in, the cash will be entered into the ledger, then it will be removed, and then a discount given. And that cash gets pocketed into the purse or wallet of the person up front. That has happened to me, and that is one that just frustrates me to no end. So how do we prevent that one from happening? It's pretty simple. We'll talk about that here in a second to prevent that from happening anymore. Then there's time clock theft that we talked about. And I want you to think about, I had this employee, I've had a couple of employees that have been just like her, but Joy comes to my mind. She was always doing something. I'm like, one day I just said to her, you never slow down. You're always working. You're always doing something. I really appreciate that. And as a result, she ended up being one of my highest paid employees in my practice because I recognized that. And I asked her, Joy, why do you always keep moving around? And she's not just, pretending like she's busy. Oh, no. I know the difference. We all know the difference. She would actually be engaged. She said, I look for things to do because in a dental practice, Rob, there's always something to do. And she was a dental assistant, whether it's in the back or if I've got all my duties and everything done in the back, I can come up to the front and I can help the office manager with collections, I can help the hygienist with recall. There's always something to be done. And she said, this is key. The busier I am, she goes, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but the busier I am, the faster the day goes by, and the sooner work's over, and I get to go home to my family. Like, you don't like being here, She's like, no, don't take it like that. And she's right. So time clock theft is something that we see. I'm just going to say we've seen it more in the last 10 years than we saw it years ago. So personal cell phone usage while on the clock, that's time clock theft, people. I don't care how you look at it. And you're going to say, oh, Rob, you're being nitpicky. No, you're on the clock. Stay off your phone. Unproductive while on the clock. If you're just sitting there staring into oblivion and you're in some other world, you're on the clock again. Not clocking out for personal time away from the practice. I have caught many employees that have gone to personal appointments or, taken off and they're still clocked in and they don't adjust it. They don't adjust the clock. And it's one thing if it's a mistake and it's adjusted. I love that. It's another thing if it's intentional. Or they're absent without leave. They're somewhere in the building chatting with team members from other offices. They're exercising, running the stairs up and down for 15, 20 minutes while they're on the clock. Yep, had that one. And then asking to work while the office should be closed. Hey, Rob, you're going to be out lecturing for a couple days. I need the hours. Can I come in and work? Sure, go ahead. And then they get there, and then they're not doing anything. They're, they bring the kids in. The kids are watching movies. They're goofing around with them. They're doing their own personal stuff, running personal errands, and they're on the clock. Yeah, that's called time clock theft, people. There's a bunch of others, but those are the ones that we typically see. So how to prevent fraud and embezzlement in the dental practice? One of the most important things to do is background checks, and they are inexpensive. Our company does them for like $25. Does a background check, when I say our company, not my practice, my business, but Panther Securities and Investigations. Give them a call, look them up. They're here in Salt Lake, and they can do background checks on anybody nationwide. I can't tell you how many practices don't do background checks, and I'm not. And here's the funny thing, and it's not just doing a background check like we're able to do in the private investigative world, where we're able to tap into records that most people can't. It's also looking at their Facebook page. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. And I have to be careful here. There's one person that we went to bring in as a temp for a couple of days, and my hygienist, she said, here's the person's name. I looked him up, and after looking at their Facebook page, I'm like, yeah, no, Nichelle, I don't think I want that person in my office based upon what she's posted on her Facebook page. Have you looked at this? And I wish I could go into detail because you guys would start dying laughing with what we saw. What's even funnier is it's crazy what people will post on their Facebook page. Like, nobody looks at that. Every corporation looks at social media, so should you. Look at it. And then you got to give an employee a 90-day trial period. And just say, look, for 90 days, we're going to check things out. And if it doesn't work out, then we're going to just part company and tell each other to have a great day. And it just, you just weren't quite the right fit for our practice. That 90-day period is another time period where you can actually call the references on their resume and actually do some more background checking on the person. You want to have systems and protocols in place. When I say systems and protocols, one of the most important things, and we teach our office managers when they come through the training, is a day sheet. The day sheet at the end of the day, Doc, is what keeps your office manager honest and what keeps you honest. That day sheet needs to be looked at. It shows all the patients that came in, all the payments that were made, all the payments were expected to be made, and where the payments went. And does the payment add up to the actual deposit slip, or we actually have a reporting page. It's really easy to fill out, but it's robust, and it has to match the day sheet. These are things that help you know what your write-offs are, Doc, to your patients. And I'm not talking about billing out fee-for-service fees and then sending it off to the insurance company and then having big monstrosity write-offs. That's not what I'm talking about. And those of you who've been through our training, we teach you to hook the patient to their fee schedule and bill that out. Then you know where your production is any given day. By knowing where your production is exactly, and that can be known, then you can compare that production for the day, to what was collected over the counter and what should be going off to the insurance. Docs, you have to review that day sheet. That day sheet helps you keep your office manager honest and prevents her or him from doing things that they wish that they would not have done if they're ever tempted. Everybody's tempted. Everybody. And so the most important thing in our thought leadership is help each other out. Don't let anybody get tempted and do something they wish they would have done. And one more thing, and this is called we in the PI world, when you have a defense system around your office, whether it's electronic or whether it's a solid physical defense system, there's these things called penetration tests that we teach offices to do. And that's one of the ways that you can always check to make sure your front office is being honest. And you do these at random. And what you do is you have trackable cash payments. You have a patient pay their bill in cash with currency that you know about. Take a picture of it, write down the notes, identification number, and see if that cash ends up in the deposit at the end of the day. And if it doesn't, then that's a conversation that you have with your team member. And one of the offices years and years ago that we trained, the doc was concerned that the office manager that he had hired might be doing things that she shouldn't be doing. And so what we did is we took a look at I did a quick scan of the ledger and pulled up a couple of day sheets just from the past week. And lo and behold, I found about $385 in cash that hadn't been accounted for in his account. So I showed him that, and he was like, what the heck? He called the office manager, and she's like, oh, yeah, that's in my purse, and I'm taking it to the bank. I just haven't taken it there yet. I'm like, are you kidding me? And you're going to buy that one? I looked at him, and he was so and you got to know, team members, when that happens to us, we consider you family. We try to treat you as family. Every one of our team members is family, and there's nothing worse than being burned by a family member. That's just the bottom line. So his heart dropped right out of his rear end, and he goes, I can't believe that she did that. And he literally fired her right on the spot. And so that's something you just don't want to have happen. So, and that's, again, in our thought leadership, we want to prevent office managers from being tempted like that. And she was tempted. It later came out after we called the police on her and had them investigate it. She got busted. She knew that she had taken it. The money wasn't in her purse. She'd already spent it. And it was like, it's the same old excuse. My husband's out of work, or he's laid off, or he's got injured, and I've got kids to feed, and woe is me. And I'm sorry, you're not entitled. It's not an entitlement program working for any of the dental offices, and you're busted. So let's talk about some red flags from office managers and front office people that we typically see. I know there's some of you sitting there listening to this with your whole team members. So if you fit any of these categories, change. Choose the right, do the right thing. If you've fallen into prey, apologize to your doc, make it right. Okay? But most of the office managers that we get to deal with, they seem pretty up and up, and they're awesome, and we love you. We want you to know that. And this is why we teach this. We teach this to the office managers that come through our training, and I always joke with them. It's like, okay, so if you have any of these behaviors and you're stealing from your doc, you better change, because the doc's going to get the same information, okay? So here we go. First one is they're territorial. They refuse to cross-train. They literally pee in all four corners of the office and set up their territory. That is one of the first red flags that when we come into offices and we train or we start talking with team members, that is the first red flag. That right there is like, number one, if you're territorial, if you don't want anybody to know your job, I'm sorry. That's such a huge red flag. Bad deal. So be careful with that one. The second one is the take charge personalities. They're constantly seeking for more responsibility. They don't want to work as a team. They want all the responsibility. They don't want to delegate, and they want ultimate control of everything. The third one's the know-it-all people. They resist learning from companies like ours and other consultants that will come in. They don't want anybody snooping in their business. They don't want anybody looking at what they're doing. So that's the third one. Number 4 is oftentimes they're long-term employees who never take vacations. So they're always there when you're on vacation, going in, making deposits. They won't take time off. That's the fourth red flag we see. Fifth one is they prevent the dentist from communicating with patients. Doctor, don't talk finances with patients. I'll cover that. I've got that handled. You do dentistry, I'll do finances. And I can't tell you how many consultants out there teach that. They teach that. So many of these consultants are they're self-appointed consultants or were office managers for years. They don't have the business training, business degrees, MBAs, in any other field to really have the commensurate achievement to be teaching stuff like this. And that's like a major player for me of somebody, anybody that teaches that as a consultant, I'd look for somebody else. You want, Doc, you're the CEO of the company. If you can't talk finances with your patients, then you need to come through a course with me. We'll have a little little role play. I'll prevent that from happening anymore. You need to be able to talk finances with your patients. Okay, the sixth one, and this is one that we just saw the other day, is they bully they often complain about other team members. And team members are absolutely afraid of them. They're scared to death of them. They don't even want to talk to them. The front office member will always put them down and discard any suggestions that they have. So anytime you see bullying taking place and your team members are scared to death of the front office member, the office manager, that's a major red flag. 7 is a lifestyle well above the salaries, such as new cars, expensive clothing, expensive trips. Anytime if you see an office manager pull in with a Cadillac Escalade or something like that, that's you might want to make sure that their spouses have jobs that are paying 4 times what they pay. All right, that's 7. 8, drugs and alcohol abuse, gambling habits, or persistent borrowing. Those are major red flags all the time. If a team member has that issue, I had one of the docs in our building many years ago had to let go of one of his team members because of alcohol abuse. And it's like they do things when they're using drugs or alcohol, the behavior changes. They just do things they normally wouldn't do. So that's like number 8. And then number 9. 9's one of the most important ones. It's what your gut tells you. It's your gut telling you something's not right. Something is wrong, and I need to follow that. And then you discard it because you get busy working on patients and everything else. Docs, you need to follow your gut. We had one of our clients call several weeks ago, and they're like, my gut's telling me that this is not a good situation, but and what do I do? And I'll tell you, office managers right now, it's the hardest thing that we ever have to do is let you go. You're like the core of the practice. You're like the foundation, the cornerstone of the practice. That's the type of responsibility that we put on you, us dentists put on you, and that's our fault. We put that kind of weight on you, and most of the time, you've never been given the training that you actually truly do need to make the practice profitable and to sustain profitability, because you've never had business courses. You've never you don't have that background like everybody else in the office has of some form of formal training and going to school and learning about accounting and business management and things of that nature. And offices that have team members that have that training, they're the lucky ones. They're the ones that have, it's nice to have somebody up front that has that. that's where we come in at my practice, my business. We teach our office managers key business concepts and principles that are just specific to dentistry. So it's not like they have to go get a 4-year degree. We're able to help them with that, and then we encourage them to take a few classes and have the dentist pay for it. Okay, so those are the red flags that we typically see that you've got to be paying attention to, Doc. And again, that the deposit sheets, day sheets, those are the things that you need to be looking at every day. Don't be ready to rip out of the practice and run. Take the time to make sure your office manager's in check so you can prevent him or her from ever being tempted and falling prey into fraud and embezzlement. So look at the deposit sheets and look at the day sheets and compare them and make sure that they look accurate based upon the patients that have come through your practice that day. And here's the thing. In my practice, everybody's cross-trained, so everybody can print out a day sheet and fill out our deposit sheet. And what's really nice is, and sometimes they'll make little mistakes, and that's fine, when they make errors. But what's tough is everything has to balance at the end of the day, and if it doesn't, then oftentimes they'll call for another employee to help them. And when it comes to deposits, having 2 initials on any type of deposit that comes through, that helps also in preventing fraud and embezzlement. So watching the day sheets, watching the deposits, you cannot, and this is what's really tough, is you cannot prevent all fraud and embezzlement in any business. It's just impossible. There's so many different ways for any unscrupulous individual who has intent of committing fraud and embezzlement. They'll find ways. But blocking the big ways is at least better than not blocking them at all. So and then the other thing too is it's like my the dentist that was next to me, Dr. Steve. He busted his office manager with fraud and embezzlement. She got him for $60,000. And often, oftentimes we dentists, we don't want to, your family, we feel bad. We feel like we just want to let you go, fire you. And then what happens? You go work somewhere else. You go into another dental practice and do the same thing. Not Steve. And I love the example that he set. He busted her, had her arrested. She got busted with a class. She stole enough from him, so it was a class 2 felony that they pleaded it to, and she spent a couple of years in prison. I love it. That's what needs to happen. So the protocol, if you catch somebody that's stealing from you, is, or if your gut tells you something's not right in the practice, get help from a private investigative firm. You can use Panther Securities and Investigations. Give them a call, and they'll jump right on it and start helping you with that. It's not inexpensive, though. It's like you're going to pay money for forensic accounting and for an investigation, and that's where it's tough because a lot of docs will weigh the pros and cons of spending, $5, $10, $15, even $20,000 for larger offices for the forensic accounting to take place. It's like a CPA. There's CPAs in the company. These are retired federal agents, special agents for the FBI, who their sole responsibility was forensic accounting. Those are the kinds of individuals that work at Panther Securities and Investigations. And I'm just the weak link there. That's what I always call myself because I do other stuff for them, the different types of investigations. So these people are way smarter than I am, and you get help from a company like that. You determine the level of arrest that you want to accomplish with that person, and because there are differences between misdemeanors and felonies. Me personally, I like to catch them when it's just a misdemeanor. So yeah, it'll go on the record. Sometimes they'll go to jail, but if it's entered the amounts where it becomes a felony, that's because you haven't been paying attention, Doc. immediately call law enforcement. Have them, you want to file an incident report of theft, and you want a detective to come there, and you want to, they'll ask if a private investigative firm is working with you on it. Oftentimes, though, the police departments, they don't have the resources to get into that type of investigative work. That's why you need to rely on a good private investigative firm. And there's firms out there that specialize in dental fraud and embezzlement. It's amazing that there's just firms that specialize in that. It goes to tell you that 70+% of fraud, embezzlement, in dentistry happens. So, and at the end, absolutely prosecute. You're not doing that team member any favors if you don't. But let's talk about something that's really important. The things that will bite you, Doc, in the butt when problems occur. And this is where you have to be absolutely careful with everything that you do. If you are unprofessional and joking around with your team, that individual will try to use that against you. If you're inappropriate with any team member, especially if you're upcoding or doing things that you shouldn't be doing, they will use that against you. If you're dishonest in your practice protocols and procedures in any way, shape, or form, they will use that against you. The thief will use anything that they can against you to try to make you look bad. And so keep yourself above board. Don't do things that you will regret, and just keep it all professional. So again, the two most important things for you to do to prevent thievery: day sheets, and be honest in your dealings with your business. I hate talking about this when everybody's listening. It's like, it's just tough. It's tough because I've had fraud and embezzlement happen to me with employees. Shoot, I had an employee just taking cash right out of my wallet in my office. Caught her doing that. And it's tough because it just breaks your heart that you've got to let them go. And it wreaks havoc on the practice because now you just lose a team member instantaneously. So let's do this. This is our thought leadership, okay? Let's help each other stay honest. And why does fraud and embezzlement happen? With some, it's habitual. They go from practice to practice, and they do bad things, okay? And nobody ever busts them. That's unfortunate. But if our thought leadership, most people are just tempted. They're tempted that one time. So if we have good, healthy working relationships with each other, help each other stay above board. Help each other keep honest and not be tempted by that little devil who tempts us to do bad things when normally we wouldn't. Because most of the people that we see commit fraud and embezzlement are good people that they have good hearts, and they were just that $100 bill came across the counter. They're in a tough spot, and boy, could they use that $100 bill more than the doc can, because the doc's already rich and wealthy, right? It's just that one time of temptation that gets everybody. So docs, ask for day sheets, create forms that you see where the write-offs are, you see where the collections are, where all the collections. We have sheets that show checks, cash, and terminal totals. If you want to know what those are, give us a call. We'll shoot you a copy of what we use in our practice if it will help you if you don't have something like that. And so most important, have each other's backs. Keep each other honest and help each other do the right thing, because I believe that's what the man upstairs would want us to do. Thank you so much for tuning into the My Practice, My Business podcast. You can find additional podcasts you may have missed that will help you with your dental practice at Apple iTunes Podcasts. And remember to become a subscriber to our podcast. Many of you have asked how to help support the My Practice, My Business podcast. If you have enjoyed the program and information you received today, the best way to help is to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks again for allowing us to be a part of your day.